Monday, April 28th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, the three major desktop operating systems and why we both love and hate them.
Let's do this.
Wow, we totally copped out last week. We did, what, 2 shows, barely?
Last week was pretty sad, but I mean, I got a new computer.
And I went out of town for the weekend, like right after. And
I sort of went out of town, but not as far away.
The weekend before that, we had that crazy thing in the city. And the thing is, it's funny because that weekend before last week, we were talking like, man, Geeknights is really picking up. Like we're doing these radio things. We got all these like semi-professional things going on now. We're getting the big time. We're so professional now. Yeah, look how professional we are. Yeah, and then we totally cop out into a week of crap.
That's all right, because I think that after last week, I'm sort of freshened, and I got some new ideas. I think we can tilt the show in a newer, better direction. Because, we've been doing the show pretty consistently, but I don't think we've improved it significantly in a while. But
I think we hit a plateau where we got real good, and to get beyond that, we have to change something up. And while I still want to put stuff in the experimental feed, that's like 2 steps beyond the kind of improvements I'm talking about right now.
Yeah, I got some ideas. I think it's going to be pretty good here.
Yep, but actually, I had a good, refreshing weekend, too, because last week, it was kind of like we'd been drilling and forcing ourselves not to miss episodes, and go, 180 miles an hour, and we kind of burned out. And we had this weekend where I actually went to Rochester, the old alma mater for TorahCon. I'll talk about I'll review TorahCon as my news on Wednesday, because it was a good con, but
it's one day.
I realized something sad. Remember way back when you get to college and then you realize suddenly that all the stereotypes of college kids that you thought were fake and no one would really live that way, you'd kind of become when you realize you're sitting in class in your pajamas, unshaven after having pulled an all-nighter and eaten ramen for breakfast.
That's college.
Well, before I went to college, I always thought that was BS. I was like, no one's really like that. And I got to college, and I saw people like that. I was like, that's totally like hipster bullshit. That's all affected. And then one day, it was like, look what you've become, Rim.
Yeah, but you know what? As much as those college stereotypes are real, Saved by the Bell, not real at all. Not even close.
Man, if Saved by the Bell... The thing is, maybe that's it. I was burned by Saved by the Bell. When I was in elementary, like middle school, I saw Saved by the Bell, and I was like, man, that's what high school's like. Then I got to high school, I was like, wow, Zach Morris lied to me.
Do you think maybe, like, the Japanese people have a similar thing? Like, they watch all these high school animes when they're in middle and elementary school, and they think,
it's like, man,
they think high school is like all the high school anime, and that it's
I'm gonna
totally
get a giant
not.
robot, and then I'm going to get punched by a girl that I like, but then we'll fall in love, and... But then I get to college, and it's like, no, all the stereotypes were true. In fact, the reality is far more stereotypical than the media would even begin to portray it as.
Yep.
But I hit another one of those stereotypes. So we go to cons a lot, and, we see these people who are more famous than us, but not super famous, or people who are legitimately mainstream famous. And... they always kind of show up late, like stroll into the ops office like 5 minutes before their event, like, yeah, I'm here, where's my badge, give me some booze, blah, blah, blah. And then they go and do their panel half-assedly, and then they leave and like skip their next 4 panels, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I know those types.
I had one panel to do at TorahCon, and I showed up at TorahCon like 5 minutes before it was supposed to go. I kind of walked in, someone's like, you got a badge? I was like, do you know who I am? Where's the con chair? And then I went and I was like, do I need a badge? She's like, nah, probably not. And then I went over to my panel room. I walk in. People are sitting there waiting. And I open with, yeah, so I totally just got here and I didn't plan anything for this. Hi, I'm Rim.
Who was
Podcasting.
there?
Actually, the room was full.
All right.
But it was the alumni room. But the thing is, I noticed...
You mean the 1829 room?
Well, no, I mean the alumni room.
I don't know which one that is.
Nah, but I'll talk about all that on Wednesday. But I totally, after I did my panel, I was like, all right, that was great. See you guys. and then I kind of left the con and didn't come back.
So wait, how are you supposed to review this con Wednesday if you didn't spend any time at it?
I asked them to send me kind of a synopsis press release and, numbers and all that stuff. And I was there, walking in, walking out. I know how well the con did. You look at a con and it's obvious. This con succeeded. This con failed.
All righty.
Torcon succeeded.
Well, my new computer quite succeeded with the awesome.
Man, it's rare to see you excited about shit, but I got home from Torcon.
You want to touch my computer.
I want to touch your computer like you wouldn't believe.
But you're not gonna, because it's got a password on it.
Physical passwords. The most... I cannot think of something more trivial to break, but yet... In all these years, I don't think either one of us have ever even bothered thinking about hacking into each other's computers.
No.
It's like, what?
We both use really good passwords. I mean, I guess you
I don't need to know your password. I mount your volume with a live CD.
You could indeed do that, but you know what? I'm gonna turn on the BitLocker encryption.
BitLocker encryption is pretty hot.
Yeah.
But you know what I'll do? I'll boot into Windows, and then I'm totally insecure, and you can just change my root password. I don't know if XP or Vista fixed that, but... Anyone out there, you realize that with Windows, anything XP or prior, you can boot a floppy disk and just arbitrarily change anyone's password to anything.
Yep. Well, very soon, I have the powerful computer. It is running the Windows, but I have the Linux going in the VMware, and it's stupid fast. Like, I have a Core 2 Duo at work, but it's a Core 2 Duo 6600. The cores are 1.8 gigahertz in my one at work, right? And it's pretty fast running Ubuntu.
Ubuntu. Well, I haven't done that in a while.
This one has 2 cores. They're 3 gigahertz. Also, it's 45 nanometer as opposed to 65 nanometer, which means the transistors are 20 nanometers smaller than the transistors on the one I have at work.
Man, and 45 nanometer is really small.
Right.
I remember when 3-digit and higher numbers were the hot shit.
Right. And in addition to that, there's 6 megabytes of cache as opposed to like 4. Yeah, it is stupid fast. I think it's actually, I could have gotten a quad core for a similar price. I think it's actually faster than the quad core because the quad core would only be faster in situations where you were using multiple cores, but actually, most of the time, you're only, 2 is plenty for the vast majority of shit. So fast.
I'll admit, I just got a quad core at work, a quad core Xeon.
Well, a quad core Xeon is the cores are probably as fast as my cores.
It's pretty much, I got the best computer that you can have on a desktop without spending there's the amount of money you can spend to get something. And then beyond that, it's like I commission a computer to be made for me by engineers level. That's pretty much what I got.
Yeah.
But I don't need it. Like, I don't even use... I use one of those cores, like a little bit.
Yep. So, yeah, there's going to be some videos soon, video action. There's going to be a lot more PC gaming action going on. There's going to be all kinds of action real soon. You better watch out. Also, I got to say... is the first computer I've ever had where it's actually as fast as me. Like, that's the number one thing I hate about all computers I've ever used, is that I can push buttons faster than the computer can do what I'm telling it to do.
Not always. I mean, back in the day, I couldn't do that on my Pentium 200 at first, but then applications got more complex and more powerful, and then I couldn't do that anymore. Yeah, I started getting slowed down.
Well, I'm getting a lot faster than, personally, as, like...
Well, because think about it. It's real quick to type, the command that would compile something. Yeah. It's not real quick to get it compiled.
No. But I mean, like, just with Firefox, on most computers, I'm like, Control L, and I start typing URL, and, like, it'll go... and then it'll sort of type half the URL because I typed it too fast before the Control L registered.
Well, the thing is...
I'll push Control W, then Control T to, like, close a tab, open a new one, and then start typing URL, and, like, it'll start typing the URL. Half of it will be in the tab that didn't close yet, and half of it will be in the new tab.
Man, you had a slow computer.
Yeah.
Man.
That even happens at work, though, on the Core 2 Duo at work.
Really?
Yeah.
That doesn't even happen on my computer here.
It happens to me a lot because I'm that fast.
It happened once when I realized that I'd opened, like, my 15th Firefox tab. Yeah. And I hadn't closed Firefox in like a week.
I just, but I do a lot of stuff. Like, I'll do a command to open a terminal that SSHs into a machine, type a command, like switch with the keyboard to another window that's already running a command, cancel that command, start a new one, and I'm just, I do a lot of stuff like that.
The other day, this is just kind of an aside, but I was going to reboot my computer. So I had I was closing all my windows, like shutting everything down kind of gracefully, making sure I wasn't like logged in anywhere, doing anything. And I remember I pull open one terminal window in my X Windows thing, and I'm like, all right. And I'm like root on some machine, like some test box. So I'd have exit. And then obviously I'm not root anymore, so I type exit again. But the terminal doesn't go away. Now it's on some other computer. So I keep typing exit. And over the course of like the previous 2 weeks, I think I've been SSH'd into like 8 computers.
Yeah, something like that happened.
I was like, how deep did this go?
If you just close the terminal, all the SSH connections
I know,
close
but
out.
because I was going to type exit a couple times, and after it didn't close right away, I was curious where I started and where I'd been.
All right.
It was like, what computer did I SSH into first and why?
But yeah, I have a computer that's as fast as me or faster than me. I'm able to like keep Steam open all the time. I got iTunes in my room instead of having to VNC to the Mac and living room.
Yeah, that was the main reason.
Actually, I tried to sort my music collection, right? I dragged a gigantic folder of music into the automatic sorting program, and the limitation was the network speed of contacting the...
Is this the same sorting application that would just crash on your old computer?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Isn't it great to have a fast computer?
Oh, it's fantastic. So yeah, let's make up some news here.
So Reiser's guilty.
That's my news.
Okay, do your news.
Oh, do you want to do it?
Oh, no, I got a news.
All right, then why you announcing my news before I do it?
All right, fine. I didn't say anything.
Okay, that's right. So there's this guy named Hans Reiser.
Who was guilty.
I think we've talked about this on the show once before, if maybe more than once.
Long story short, developer for Reiser FS, which is a damn good file system.
Yeah, basically, this guy, the only reason we're talking about this, the guy is an open source software developer, all right? He sort of single-handedly, or mostly single-handedly, invented this file system, which is really good. It's a good, high-quality file system that's really innovative, and he's working on the 4th version of it. And if you looked at
He's been working on it forever, though. Reiser 4 has been like this dream of mine.
Right. But Reiser 4, you look at some of the things that it can do, like on paper, and it's like it would be revolutionary if it actually came to be in the way that it's written on paper. But it didn't come to be. Because Hans Reiser, there are other people working on it. I mean, it's open source. I mean, if someone really wanted to, they could go and get the code and just can carry on the project. And some people might be doing that, but I'm not sure. But anyway, basically, he's an open source developer, but separate from that,
he murdered his wife.
Well, according to this court, he murdered his wife. So I guess it's safe to say he did. I guess it's not slander if a court found him guilty of murdering his wife, which they did.
Yeah, it's not like the media. We are the media, but we don't have to say allegedly anymore. We don't have to say Hans Reiser, who allegedly murdered his wife.
Right.
We say Hans Reiser, wife killer.
Right, but the thing is, right, if you look into the facts of this case, all right, it is incredibly strange. It is like one of the strangest murder cases I've ever seen, right? I mean, like, there's all sorts of stuff, like they can't find the body, right? They're claiming that the wife ran back to Russia with the kids to run away from him. There was some guy who his wife was cheating with, and they were doing, like, weird fetishy stuff, and there was, like, a car that was found with blood on it somewhere, and there's a lot of weird shit going on with this case.
Like, this is one of those someone meticulously murdered or meticulously framed someone else.
Yeah, something is very strange. Something illegal happened somewhere, right? It's just you don't know what exactly. And we still don't know what. But it's really, this has been going on for a long time. And actually, it was funny. A few weeks ago, we were like, hey, did that ever conclude?
Here's an example of the craziness. I'm pulling this from Wikipedia. I was just kind of looking because I remember some of the craziness.
I read that article months ago.
Quote, Sean Sturgeon, a one-time friend of Reiser, and this is the guy who was possibly sleeping with his wife and allegedly was an ex-lover of her, independently of all this, confessed to killing 8 other people.
Yep.
But claims that he didn't kill her.
Yep.
So, what? Wow, imagine that. If this is to be believed, Reiser knew a guy who had slept with his wife at some point, who independently of all this murdered 8 people, but yet didn't murder her. And yet he murdered her.
It's really a fucked up case, and the only reason we have any interest in it is because
I want Reiser 4.
The software this guy happened to make, and, to his disadvantage, as good as he is, I guess, in making file systems, Hans Reiser, like many nerdy type people, has some social issues. He's not really a likable. He's kind of a weird guy, and I think the reason that he was found guilty, despite there basically not being much evidence in this case, I mean, there's no body, there's no physical evidence, there's no eyewitnesses, there's no nothing, all right? But he was found guilty, from what I can tell, because he didn't know when to shut up. I mean,
I've heard a lot of rumors from a lot of people long before this all, murder trial happened, that everyone said he was kind of an asshole to everyone.
He's also sort of he's a weird guy. And here's a quote from an article on Wired, which I'll link you to. This is Hans Reiser's exact quote, right? I have a compulsive tendency to say things that I know are true that people don't want to be true.
Huh.
Yeah. Okay.
This is just craziness. I imagine one thing, though. I am sure during the jury selection, one of the questions was, do you know who Hans Reiser is, or do you use Linux? Perhaps they just didn't let anyone with a neckbeard into the jury room.
Perhaps, but this is if you like watching CSIs or any sort of police detective-y court shows, right? This is the real deal. This really happened, right? And it's way more interesting. You can't write a story like this, And so you should definitely look into it. Definitely.
So in some definite tech news, IBM is definitely starting to push Lotus Notes again.
What the fuck? Isn't it dead? When's the last time they updated that shit?
Yesterday.
Oh, God.
See, my first real job outside of college, and actually it was while I was still in college.
Was IBM.
Was for IBM. I worked at the MLC. I was technically a software engineer, but really I was like a support engineer.
The Mulk IBM? Or the IBM Mulk?
I was at the MLC systems, like the 200 millimeter fab. I worked at the place where they made
200. I got 45.
That refers to the size of the wafer that has the chips on it.
All right.
It's 200 millimeters and it's a circle. And we had built.
I knew that.
We had built next to it the 300 millimeter fab. And let me tell you, working with the 200 millimeter fab, but I had a bunch of wafers. Because
if you had a 300 millimeter fab and you're making 45 nanometer chips, how many transistors could fit all the way across the wafer?
That is a calculation that I'm not going to try to make right now. Let me put it this way.
I like to make you do math.
300 millimeters is bigger than you're thinking right now.
It's really big.
Yeah. And when we'd make these, we'd cram 100 of them into this special kind of case, and then they'd carry these cases around. And I remember one specific incident.
Each wafer's got 100, more than 100 chips on it.
Yeah, we're talking PlayStation 3 cell chips from before they were announced.
So these chips, one chip costs hundreds of dollars at the store, retail, right? You've got a wafer with hundreds of the chips on it, and then you got a whole bunch of the wafers together in one spot.
Dude dropped one of these things.
Oh man, that's like you mean at least if you drop gold, it doesn't lose its value.
But anyway, so at IBM, we used Lotus Notes. And let me tell you, Lotus Notes is pretty much functionally equivalent to, the Exchange kind of Microsoft thing. But the interface is alien. If you've never used it, it is completely unlike any other program like that.
So what does it do? Does it do instant messaging?
It does everything that Exchange does.
So it
the
does
full Exchange integrated environment.
So it's an email server. It's a calendar.
It's email, calendar sharing, instant messaging, scheduling. You can build applications within it, full database integration, whatever.
Exchange, I don't think is that powerful.
Yeah, it is.
Is it really? Yeah. Anyway.
The only thing Exchange doesn't have is a very robust mechanism for building applications within it.
Yeah, that's what I was saying that Exchange didn't have.
But the rest of that, you can integrate Exchange with all these databases.
Oh yeah, you can integrate
Windows
it with
Office Communicator, which is actually really slick, even though it doesn't support Jabber at all.
Well, yeah, but you can always write all sorts VB applications to make it do more things.
But just the interface is alien, and all the terminology is different. You don't synchronize your mailbox, you synchronize your database, because your mailbox is actually just a database, and all this sorts of, semantically, it's unusable to someone who is familiar with any other email suite or Office suite in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But and you'd think, oh, well, it's probably cheap or something. No, it was ludicrously expensive. And pretty much no one used it but IBM and companies who used it a long time ago and were afraid to stop
Well, I
using
mean,
it.
before Exchange existed, that was the thing. I mean, what else could you do besides just, normal, like, send mail?
Well, the Microsoft mail solutions have been around for a long time, and so have the Lotus ones. They were kind of like these two competing, like their Office suites and everything.
I mean, Exchange and Outlook have been around for a long time, but they're relatively new compared to Lotus Notes. I mean, Lotus Notes is from, like, you could get that shit on, like, IBM PS1s.
But don't even let me get into Domino, like the server for Lotus Notes, because I dealt with that.
Oh, so Domino is the Lotus Notes server?
Pretty much.
Oh, the same way Exchange is the Outlook server?
But anyway.
So Notes is Outlook? Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Anyway, the deal is they're pushing it, and they've dropped the licensing costs to be, compared to other enterprise solutions, practically free. And I don't know, I mean, I don't think I ever talked about this, but one of the big things IBM was doing when I was there, and I actually was a big part of this, and I got us off of Windows and off of OS2, but in some areas, and a lot of people were working really hard to kind of move to Linux and move toward the future. But there is actually a Linux client native for Lotus.
Really? I was about to ask.
And a native Linux server. Those have been around for a while. And IBM internally was using them for a long time as we were testing them and working out the kinks and all that. And there's also an OS X client native and an OS X server if you're crazy.
Wow.
And what IBM is suddenly doing now is they're pushing this as a cheaper but still very functional alternative to the Microsoft Outlook environment with the added benefit that you can run it in Linux.
There definitely are, some needed, competitors to Exchange. Because, I mean, for a business, Exchange is really where it's
I'll put
at.
it this way. Scott and I are technical people. You'd think, oh, we'll just run our own email. I don't think you understand how awful it is to run any email solution.
Yeah, I mean, Google provides a pretty competitive product with the Google Apps.
Oh, if I were a small business, I would use Google Apps
but
in
for
a second.
For a big business like IBM, you can't. Google Apps sort of falls apart. It does not scale.
Not at all.
Maybe Google has their own like internal thing that they use that scales, but they don't give that to other people.
Plus, small business, you trust Google because you don't care. Large business, or like where I work now.
Yeah,
like,
if you're IBM, your emails, you don't want Google reading those emails. You can't have that shit. That can't happen. So you definitely need to run your own servers with your own software on them.
But I'm going to look more into this, and actually what I want to do, I'm going to try to ask if anyone I know who worked at IBM is still there. I'm going to see if I can get some sort of press information about this, because if the kind of promises are true, and this works the way it's advertised, and the licensing stays the way it is, this is going to be a big problem for Microsoft in the future.
Maybe.
In the future.
The thing is that in that particular department, there's a lot of momentum.
Yes,
know?
there is, but at the same time, there are a lot of relatively small companies that are up and coming and like kind of, now's the time to get our enterprise shit together. What do we buy? And then IBM says, well, look how cheap this is.
Yep. The other thing, though, is that even though, it might, if your whole business uses it, might be okay. For interbusiness stuff, it might be a little tricky.
Well, the thing is, for interbusiness stuff, the only problem is with the actual document writing and that sort of thing. But people have problems anyway, even if they're just using Microsoft stuff these days because of the incompatibilities.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say much more about the details and how well I think this will go until I find out a lot more about it. It's going to take some time, but I find this kind of interesting. Things of the day. Now, typing of the dead is like the best typing thing ever.
Typing the dead is pretty good, but I think Mario teaches typing.
What were you going to play Mario teaches typing on?
An old Mac L2C.
Yeah. Anyway, this was on BB Spot, which is one of those sites that died a long time ago, but for some reason it's still there.
Yeah, go BB Spot.
I don't know who goes to BB Spot.
Maybe one guy. I think one guy does the whole thing, and I think he's living off the ad revenue. So,
well, the thing is, Meme Pool pretty much just died, but it's still there. But BB Spot continues to update. And
well, BB Spot has a lot more. They actually generate content, whereas Meme Pool was just linking before.
No, but the thing
in
is,
the
BB Spot, even when it was the hot shit, I never once read anything on BB Spot ever. All I would ever do
I read
is
a
go
few
there
things on there
and look in the upper left corner where they have their 5 like things of the day. And
That's what I mostly did, but I would occasionally read they had some content there. Usually I didn't see it weird. It's like I wouldn't go to BB Spot and read the content. If I went to BB Spot, I would look at their links in the top left, like their 10 links of the day. But occasionally some other site like Slashdot or something would link to BB Spot's content directly, like a funny blog, parody blog post they made. And then I would read it.
See, but anyway, BB Spot more and more lately, kind of like College Humor, is becoming this almost useful thing, especially to find things of the day, because Dig is dead. Dig is just so useless now. Like, I haven't seen anything compelling on Dig in weeks. But right here from BB Spot, Type Racer. All it is, you race against other people typing live in real time, and it tells you your words per minute. And it's really, really fun. And I can say I'm happy. I average about 100 words a minute, which is a lot more than I expected.
Yeah, I got like 70, but I was on my laptop and I was still trying to figure it out. I'm sure when I go and see the room on my wicked fast computer that I'll be dominating.
But
of course, it was weird. It's like I fucked up like a bunch of times on my laptop keyboard and I was going really slow. I still won every race I raced.
Well, I noticed, though, they have a recent high scores thing, and like any web game, I'm sure it's being gamed, because the number 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17th places out of 20 are all occupied by the same guy who is Cheetah, which could be cheater.
Uh-huh.
Also, 205 words a minute, not bloody likely.
No, he's probably wrote in a little script. It
wouldn't be hard to write a script.
That's reading the screen and then typing it, or maybe he's copying and pasting or something. Maybe he's hacked the JavaScript, probably something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, theoretically, I guess that's possible, but I don't know. I'm happy with 100 words a minute.
A Grease Monkey script could beat that game, definitely.
Yeah, but I'd recommend you all try this out. It's a fairly neutral way, kind of objective, to find out how well you type. Do it a couple times. The cool thing is they make you type something, and they make everyone who's racing type the same thing. So if it's something with a bunch of semicolons, at least you're all being kind of hampered in the same way. But it tells you at the end what you were typing, though most of the cases you should probably be able to tell. I mean, I got the words to Blowin' in the Wind by Bob Dylan. At one point, I got, someday, lad, all this will be yours. What the cottons? No, not the cottons, lad.
I got some Microsoft thing.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
So, yeah, this is cool, and I want to hear your scores. Post them in the forum.
All right, so in I think in Albion, right? They basically the Office of Government Commerce, which I assume is that like our FTC or something? I don't know what they do, right? But the Office of Government Commerce in the Londons, right? They hired a design firm to make a new logo for them because their logo was not so good.
Scott didn't, he told me about his news, and he's like, look at this logo and tell me what you see. And before I saw it, and I know what you're thinking right now, it's another unintentional goatsy. No, it's not. It is so much better than that.
Right, so it cost them £14,000 to have this logo designed. And I guess they approved the design, and they released the logo. And the logo is just the letters O, G, and C, but they're all like, since those are circular kind of letters, right? They're all the same size. They're sort of touching each other. They're overlapping a bit. And, there's this nice dark grayish color. And it's not too bad looking. Until you turn it on its side, rotating it 90 degrees to the right, then it is a laugh riot.
So, Scott, what does it resemble?
Oh, I think people have to look at it to find out. If I tell them, it won't be funny.
You can it's almost a spatial kind of like a brain test where look at it without it being rotated for you.
Yeah,
and
think about the letter. You do this, right? Think of in your minds the letters O, G, and C, but they're all exactly the same size, perfect circles, right? Except O, G, and C, right? And now put them so like the O is a little bit touching the G and the C is a little bit touching the G, right? And now rotate it to the right in your mind and think about what that looks like. And if you can figure it out without actually seeing it.
I don't think I would have figured it out.
No, I wouldn't have figured it out without seeing it. But then you have some really good brain skills.
Fusiform gyrus, here we come.
Yep. But, yeah.
I'm serious. I lolled.
I definitely
lolled to the point that I said the word lol.
I lolled and I sent it to all the coworkers who also lolled.
So, tonight.
All right.
you were like, "Oh, I'll introduce the show. I got this."
Yeah, I forgot. I thought we were gonna like stop. I haven't done a show in a while. I'm out of the groove.
All right. Well, groove it up.
No, but anyway, when I bought my new computer recently, there was sort of this dilemma of, oh, what computer do I buy, right? And the Mac Pro, as I've discussed previously, was tempting. And the reason it was tempting, despite my dislike of the OS X, right? I don't super hate it. I'm just I don't like it as much as, fanboys seem to like it.
I just want to point out before we go any further, think about this. We're at a point where if someone like Scott is going to buy a new computer, effectively, all three major operating systems are viable choices. It's not like, the OS 9 days.
Well, there are other operating systems, but they're not desktop operating systems.
Well, I said the major three. Nothing else is worthwhile to you. But back in the Mac OS 9 days, it was obvious for anyone technological. It's like, duh, you get a Linux PC or a Windows PC. And you just discounted the Mac.
Yep.
And then before that, you obviously discounted Linux because it was awful.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time where it was just Windows. There is nothing else.
Well, actually, back then, I think Mac was a valid competitor because...
No. We're talking 1995 through 2001.
Remember the original iMac?
95 through 2001, it was pretty much just even before 95. I'd say 93 through 01, it was pretty much Windows all the way. And then 02, 01 is when Linux actually sort of became usable. And then OS X came out when? I don't know. And that's, whatever the OS X came out is when the Mac started to get a little bit better. But anyway, so it was kind of tough to decide what I was going to get, mostly because, I was like, Linux would be the obvious answer. But the thing is, I already had a Linux PC, right? And I have a Linux laptop. So I can already do all the stuff Linux does. And if I was just going to stick with Linux, I didn't need to buy a new computer. The reason I was buying a new computer is because I wanted to do some video editing, which Linux didn't really have so much. But it was Windows or Mac, and it was a tough choice. And we sort of realized, like what Rim said, there are three OSs now, and it's a good and a bad thing in that each OS is really good at some things and really bad at some other things, but none of them are perfect. And that is why the Mac Pro was so tempting, despite its insane cost, is because it was the only computer capable of running all three OSs at once.
Plus, there is the side effect that if you buy a Mac product, what you do get is the industrial design. The fact that, our Mac Mini downstairs, despite all its failings, is in the end super great because it's completely silent and looks super good on our TV.
It's really tiny. But anyway, so yeah. First, I want to talk about a little bit what an operating system actually is.
Real briefly.
Yeah, real briefly. And then we'll just discuss how to pick which one is right for you. Okay, so an operating system, right? Back in the olden days, right? We're talking Apple II and previous days, You'd buy a computer, and all the software for that computer ran directly on the computer. So Oregon Trail for the Apple II doesn't run on some Apple OS, right? It talks directly to the chips in the Apple II, right? It directly. So you put that floppy disk in there, the computer boots off of the Oregon Trail floppy. Now, the thing is, that means that when you want to write a game like Oregon Trail, you have to understand the hardware in the machine. And if you want to run that Oregon Trail on a different piece of hardware, you have to completely rewrite the Oregon Trail all over again. Basically, the chip was the operating system, really, back in those days. And it sucked. So they invented the operating system, right? Well, the operating system was actually invented a long time before that, but it wasn't really big on the home PCs until, the DOS, Windows, Mac days, which are a little bit later than the Apple II. And basically what an operating system is, it's just a piece of software, and that piece of software talks to the hardware, right? And then...
I thought we were going to be brief here.
I am brief. All the other software talks to the operating system. So you put an operating system, and the only people in the world who have to worry about talking to hardware are people who make operating systems. And then when you write a piece of software like a game or a word processor, you only have to learn how to talk to the operating system, thus allowing software to run on a lot more different hardwares, as opposed to, okay, only this one specific machine can run Microsoft Word. No, pretty much any machine can run Microsoft Word. So the question then becomes, right? Since you have, you have a machine and you need an operating system to go on it, how do you pick which one? What is the difference? Why even bother? Why not just pick whichever one works?
Well, the thing that kind of annoys me is that, I use all three in fact, right now, I've got my Linux box in front of me, and that's what I'm recording Geeknights on. I'm currently typing up our post and going through my email and all this stuff while I'm talking. And right next to me also is my laptop running Windows Vista. And both of them do their jobs. And then right downstairs, I got the Mac with OS X. And every single one of them does something that the other two can't do. And at the same time, every single one of them annoys me in a different way, to the point that I feel like they're all equally useful and equally useless.
Yes, I agree entirely. Basically,
I mean, well, no, OS X annoys me because things are opaque, and if it breaks, I can't fix it because it doesn't tell me what's wrong. And when I right-click on things, the context always change, and the context changing bothers me more than anything. But when the OS does work, it's great. It's super pretty. It's super slick. The applications on it, like Adium, are amazing.
Well, Adium isn't part of OS X.
But you can't run it on anything else, so I count it as part of OS X.
But actually, I'm liking Digsby now. That's my new thing. I don't need Adium anymore.
Yeah, what I'm leery about Digsby is that why are they advertising with very, very expensive advertisements all over New York City?
Digsby?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh, I didn't see any.
They're all over Midtown.
Really? I'll have to look for them.
I wonder why. I'm curious about where this project is going.
Oh, it's just an IM client and it works, so hey. But anyway, so yeah, basically the difference between the OSs, right, is one, how do they talk to the hardware, all right, and what hardware can they talk to? And what software is for the OSs? That's really the big one, right?
Well, there's also, user interface
Well,
things.
the thing is, right, is that user interface is really, I mean, nowadays people sort of, identify the operating system by the user interface, but user interface really is a separate thing. It just so happens
because of that, it just so happens you're about to say, effectively they are intertwined, at least with OS X and Windows.
Yeah.
You can't readily change.
Well, you can. You can go and download different shells and switch it up.
Not for normal people. The average person doesn't even know they can.
Right.
I mean, I think we should really avoid the technical stuff and talk about just the reality of if you just boot Windows and use it.
Yeah, if you just boot Windows and use it, you're going to get the Windows user interface, and you can change it, but you can't change it that much.
The thing is, Windows actually has a lot of intelligent defaults, and for an average person, if you just boot Windows, it'll do everything you want to do right away.
I think for an average person, Ubuntu Linux at least, right? Or actually the major Linux desktop distributions, any Windows or Mac, will all just work for an average normal person who wants to...
Red Hat doesn't so much.
Well, yeah, actually...
No, I just got a brand new Red Hat Enterprise 5.
Oh, that's Red Hat Enterprise. Fedora will just kind of work.
No, Fedora...
When's the last time you used it?
Like a week ago. I have a Fedora box.
What was wrong with it?
If you just boot a brand new Fedora box and you start using it, it's fine. But then if you try to do some basic things, like go and change your screen resolution, a lot of times, a lot of those things just don't work.
Really?
Yeah. So, and Red Hat Enterprise, right? 5, the newest thing. We install it, all good. It's got a good NVIDIA video card in. The proprietary drivers come already installed because, it's this integrated. We bought a real Linux box, tested and working.
Mm-hmm.
So I go, all right. And I open the NVIDIA settings thing and I go to change my screen resolution. And it says, okay. And then it says, do you want to save this to your Xconfig? If you say no, then when you reboot, everything gets reset to the defaults. If you say yes, it fails because you don't have the rights to the X configuration file.
Yeah, you have to run the NVIDIA setting thing as root.
Yes, to someone who sits down like, all right, this is my new computer and isn't super technical, that's already a deal breaker.
I guess that is true.
Every other configurator thing, if you're not root and you try to run it, it prompts you for the root password or for your password or for whatever. But for the NVIDIA thing, no, it doesn't.
Well, Ubuntu doesn't have that problem.
I know, but Red Hat Enterprise and Fedora do. And even worse, the only way to make it work is to add yourself to the wheel group and then use vi sudo and edit the sudoers file to give yourself permission to do it and then run it as root.
Can't you just use like GKSU?
That doesn't come with it by default. It's not in there. I was like, duh, all right, GK sudo,
So this is
blah, blah, blah.
You know, Red Hat recently had a story that was all over the nets, like, we're giving up on the desktop. And people were like, didn't you give up on the desktop when you split Fedora off like years ago?
Yeah, but they're marketing Red Hat Enterprise Workstation as the enterprise desktop Linux, and it's not Ubuntu. And I'm still trying to convince my coworkers of this. Ubuntu is 1,000 times better and a lot more robust.
How could they not be convinced as soon as they boot it up?
Mostly it has to do with the fact that, support and that sort of thing. Plus, I haven't
You can
actually...
pay Canonical for support, just like you pay Red Hat for support.
It's not the same.
Anyway, so what is the real decisions between the OSs here, right? Okay, OS X. Good things about OS X.
Content creation.
Content creation tools up the wazoo. Not only do you have the Adobe suite, you have all the Apple stuff, you got the Pro Tools, you got everything. All the content creation stuff works, right? And all the other content creation people use it. So it's all up in the business. It comes with the hardware. So you don't have to worry about installing OSs or anything tricky like that. It just works. And, the hardware expects that one operating system. So, the fact that everything's all integrated like that, really, anything low level that if you don't want to deal with it, you're never going to have to deal with it, ever. And it looks really nice. And, I don't know. What else is so great about OS X?
That's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it. I mean,
it's really pretty and slick. And that actually does count for something.
Yeah. And also for it's not the greatest developers platform, but it's better than Windows. I mean, it is under the hood, right? It was originally Unix. Down there, somewhere deep inside, there is Unix there. And, you can still get your Unix on in the OS X. And actually, you can install a lot of open source things like Fink and such. So with OS X, you can sort of get, it's not as awesome as just running a Linux, but you can sort of get some of your Linux action, and you can get all your nice-looking everything's easy action, and you get your multimedia creation and enjoying action.
If you're not a Mac person, you're going to be frustrated anytime you want to deviate from what is already in front of you. If you want to change the behavior of something, you're fucked.
Yeah, I mean,
you're totally done.
That's the one thing I don't...
and if you're used to context menus and right-click do something... that all goes away.
Well, it doesn't all go away, but it's not.
Right-clicking on things will often bring up menus that don't do what you expect them to be doing.
Pretty much.
And also, you're not going to play any games. There's no more gaming for you.
Yeah, you can play Blizzard games. Pretty much the only games on a Mac are the game Blizzard, World of Warcraft, StarCraft, etc., etc., etc.
Unless you boot camp and dual boot, but then that kind of defeats the purpose. Now you're using Windows again.
Yeah, that's sort of. It's like, well, why did you buy? If you're gonna run Windows, right? Why, unless you're loaded with money, why buy the expensive Mac hardware? The Mac hardware is overpriced. I got a computer that's almost as fast as the Mac Pro. In fact, my RAM is faster than the RAM in a Mac Pro. Right?
Well, it depends for your purpose. If I was buying another media PC for the downstairs, I would still consider a Mac. I'd get the lowest end Mac Mini just because...
No, I said why buy a Mac if you're going to run Windows?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, actually, what I kind of want to do with our Mac Mini, as we have, it's older and older, is run Windows on it downstairs instead of OS X, because then we get the awesomeness of that hardware. It's super silent, and it's still pretty fast and reliable and doesn't use a lot of power, and we get the Bluetooth and all that's built in, but we can use the Netflix on demand in the living room.
That would be okay.
And the emulation. I think that's what we're going to do with that Mac Mini at some point.
That's an okay plan. I see its merits, but it has problems with that plan as well, in that we wouldn't be able to use the handy-dandy remote that comes with the Mac Mini.
We never use it anyway.
I use it sometimes.
No, because half the time when we use it, if you start the DVD player from the desktop, then that remote is just going to fuck everything up.
Yeah. Also, though, it's got the slot loading DVD tray and stuff like that. I'm not sure exactly how well Windows would handle the Mac Mini. Plus, the Mac Mini is really slow, and I think it would even be slower with Windows than it would be with.
I don't think it would with Windows XP, especially for what we do.
We have to get an XP. Anyway, and we'd probably want to get the Media Center edition of XP that has that all that kind of stuff going on. Anyway. So the Windows. Let's move on to the Windows.
If you want to play games, you got to use Windows.
Pretty much. I mean, you could if you need to use Windows for something that's not a game, you can run Windows in VMware or something like that. But VMware is totally a different show.
But you know what? Actually, here's the other thing.
Didn't we do a show on virtualization?
Yeah, I think we did. But if you want to create content and you don't want to use OS 10, you have to use Windows because the majority of the things for Linux for content creation, especially multimedia, are garbage.
Well, I mean, you can create content with Linux, but you're not going to be able to create the highest quality content.
Audio, you'll be okay. Video,
and it's not going to be as easy.
Oh, no, don't even say that. With video, you're hosed.
Yeah, with video, you're pretty hosed.
You're absolutely hosed.
But at least, Windows, right? Windows isn't really big on the content creation. It just so happens, though, that the Adobe software is for Windows and for Mac. So because of that, Windows is capable of decent content creation. If the Adobe suite dropped Windows would be like devoid of content creation. I mean, there's other programs like the Sony whatever and the Avid something, but really, without the Adobe suite, pretty much the Mac would be the only one in the content creation area. All right? But Windows has the gaming, and Windows has the fact that it runs on just about every hardware without a lot of issues. Right? Like, it just kind of works, and if something doesn't work, you can get the driver for it, and it supports, every piece of hardware in the known universe. I mean, a lot of people put down Linux saying, oh, it doesn't support hardware, blah, 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 right? Well, it doesn't support as much hardware as Windows, but actually, all the hardware Linux supports, or most of it anyway, it supports automatically. A clean Windows install really doesn't support that much hardware. You need to go out and get drivers from somewhere else.
That's why if you install XP on a new computer, a lot of times you can't see a lot of your SATA drives or all these sorts of hardware, and you need special boot disks and special driver disks and all that just because the XP installer never gets updated.
Yeah, there might be some hardware out there, less and less every day, but there's some people that can't get their wireless card to work in Linux, right? But if your wireless card does work in Linux, it will just work. In Windows, your wireless card might work, but you might have to go out and you're probably going to have to go out and get a driver and install and do a little process thing. It might be easy to do it, but it's still something you have to do. OS X, because it only runs and is only meant to run on Macs, it really supports almost no hardware. I mean, it actually supports more hardware than you think it would.
But at the same time, we had a wireless USB keyboard.
Yep.
And OS 10 didn't support it. Every time it booted, every time it logged out, every time anything happened, it would say, hey, I can't figure out what kind of keyboard you've got, and make you type all this crap so it could figure out what the keyboard was. And then it would work fine, but it would always forget those settings and make you do it again. But even worse, if you force killed the thing that was saying, hey, I don't understand your keyboard, it just worked fine anyway. OS 10 just was a jerk about it.
Yep.
Basically.
So we eventually we bought the stupid Mac wireless keyboard,
which, by the way, is a very hot little piece of hardware.
Well, and I won't like it for a desk, but for a living room, it's pretty awesome because it's really small, it's wireless, it's Bluetooth, so it doesn't take up a USB slot, and it works. And it works well with the Mac. It's like having a little control panel. Eject, volume up, volume down. It's a really great little media center controlling thing. But on my desk, it'd be terrible. So yeah, Windows, the other advantage of Windows, right, is that it runs pretty much all the proprietary software in the known universe, which is big for businesses. I mean, people don't think about it that much, right? But let's say, like my uncle, he's a dentist, right? He has lots of software that he needs to run as a dentist. He's got, he owns the dentistry. It's his dentistry. So he needs accounting software, right? He needs software to deal with people's insurance and dental records. He needs a software to talk to the X-ray machine and store all the X-rays in a big database. Right?
Actually, that's one way where if people really want to get Linux on the desktop in corporations, that means open source developers have to get on all these kind of niche, boring, proprietary kind of things.
Yep, it's called a vertical market is the correct term, I believe. What other operating system is going to have the dental X-ray software? Windows. You're not going to get that on Linux or Mac, all right?
Of course, a lot of that software might just run in wine, but that's
it. Might run it. There is a chance it might run in wine, yes. But
here's the way I look at it.
If you're buying a computer to run that software, running it in wine is probably not the best idea.
But in the end, here's the way I really look at it. To me, by default, it's Linux, because Linux, if you don't need something that Linux cannot provide, then Linux is great. It's like the default, and it's free.
Yeah, I mean,
and then if you need something, it's like, it's like, I do this and this and this. I don't need anything. Or I want to play games. Suddenly, all right, now I need Windows. And Windows will do everything I need and play games. Or I need Adobe whatever. All right, well, I can use Windows or Apple. All right, which one of those two do I want? And then it's a matter of preference. But if you don't need one of those proprietary things, I feel like it's at the point where you can go with Linux and it'll do everything you want, and even your grandma can use it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing about Linux, right? Is that while Linux might not have the content creation, and they don't have the gaming so much, though they actually have more gaming than Mac if you don't count the Blizzard stuff, right?
Actually, a lot more.
Yeah.
Like Wesnoth is pretty hot, and
Well, Wesnoth is on all OSs. It doesn't count.
but it's on Linux.
I guess, yeah. But Linux actually has, lots of open source gaming kind of action going on. But what Linux does, that the other OSs don't, is that it has all the basics covered, right? Your web browsing, your instant messaging, your officing, all your normal stuff. It's got your MP3 playing, your video watching. Actually, it's the best video watching OS, I say, right? And it's got all the other things. It might not do them amazingly, but there's a piece of open source software out there that'll do it. Like
Open sauce.
Open source, yes. No, it for example, audio recording. Okay, you're not going to get your Super Pro Tools, but you get your Resounds and your Audacities, which are, they're on the Audacities on the other OSs too, but, and it does the job. It can do a lot of jobs. The thing about Linux, though, is that on the other level, the below seeing level, where it talks to the hardware, the Linux kernel, what an operating system does, talks to the hardware so the software doesn't have to talk to the hardware. The way Linux talks to the hardware, even though it can't talk to as much different hardware as Windows can, the way it talks to the hardware is better in every way. I mean, you go to a computer science class, right? And they say, blah, blah, blah. They'll talk about like memory management, which is something every operating system does, is to manage the memory.
Windows kind of, let's not get into technical. Windows kind of wastes your RAM.
Right. But it says Linux, it'll be like, this is the best way to manage the memory. That's the way Linux does it. Windows doesn't do it that way. Mac does it sort of that way. Linux does it the correct computer science way. And it does everything the correct computer science way. It is, under the hood, superior in pretty much most fashions. So if you don't need a piece of software that can't talk to Linux, Linux is the best because it talks to your hardware more properly than the other operating systems. And you're going to get less crashing, more security, more stability, and it's free.
The thing is, we keep saying Linux. For the purposes of this discussion, we basically mean Ubuntu.
Well, for a desktop user, Ubuntu is the way to go.
But that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
we're not talking about servers.
Right.
We're not even, that didn't even come up.
But in terms of something that talks to your hardware, Linux kernel is what talks to the hardware in the fantastic way.
Yeah, but no one cares about that. They think, oh, I use Linux.
Yep, that's what they think.
All right, I think that's it. I think we're back in the swing of things. There'll be shows all week. Don't worry.
But yeah, it's a crazy world where simultaneously, blessed and cursed in that, back in the day, it's like Mac or PC, blah, 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 and there'd be all these fights, and there would be a clear winner here, a clear winner there.
Yeah, it's at the point where you can't. Anyone who says any one OS now of the big three is absolutely superior, unqualified, is bullshitting you, because you can't say that anymore. They all do something better than the other two.
Yeah, it's sort of like the same department we're getting to with the game consoles also. Is that, you got like your DS.
If you're a hardcore gamer, you kind of need to own all three consoles.
Yeah, it's like we got your DS, your PSPs.
Oh yeah, DS, you got to own all five consoles.
Your PS3s. Your Wiis, your X360s, right? You had all these consoles, and back in the day, it was just, people always argue as if there's this sort of thinking there has to be one is better and one is worse, period, right? Something is better than the other thing. But really, now everything is sort of equally good, just in different ways. And it's good and bad in that it's not perfect, so you'll always be pissed off because it's never going to be perfect. But you're always going to have something good no matter what you choose. So what are you going to do?
You know what I'm going to do?
What are you going to do?
I'm going to eat some dinner.
Yeah, dinner.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.